All right, this video is on fractions with a ruler. So this is a fraction video. Okay. Fractions on a ruler. Fractions on a ruler. And because I think it's kind of fun, I'm going to go ahead and make some lines here, like this. So it's kind of like a ruler, see? Okay. Fractions on a ruler. So I am going to glue down my page here. And if you can't glue it down right this second, it's okay. If you're watching this at home, you can pause. But there it is, okay? Fractions on a ruler. Now, the very first thing I want to point out is that this says inches. This distance right here is not an inch, okay? And I want to be really clear that you can't just say, oh, this is an inch, because, you know, I said it was. So we're going to write over here, not to scale. Scale means size, not to scale, not an inch. So, like, I made it big because I think it'll be easier for you to process what we're doing if you see it big, but that's not an inch, okay? So on a ruler, between each whole number, we've got these lines. And I think most of us feel pretty confident about the fact that the line directly in the middle is 1/2, okay? And if we're in between 2 and 3, it's 2.5. If we're in between 4 and 5, it's 4.5, okay? And so if you really think about it, this makes a ruler a lot like a number line. So if I make some lines like this, then I just turned my ruler into a number line. So I'm going to write that for myself. A ruler is really a physical, like a real, you can touch it, physical number line. And I think that's exciting, so I gave myself an exclamation mark there. A ruler is really a physical number line. Woo! Okay, so when I look at a number line and fractions, I don't count the lines to see where I am. I count the spaces. And so to make sure that I'm counting the spaces, I'm actually going to color in the spaces in a pattern. And I'm just doing a pattern so that I can count it more easily. Okay? So I'm just coloring in between the spaces, not all the way down, I'm not taking forever, and I'm just doing a pattern so that I can really see those spaces. Okay? The other thing I like about doing the coloring like that is now, if I make a line across like this, then that really does start to look like, you can imagine that as like a fraction question, right? The whole thing, and like what fraction of it is yellow and what fraction's pink or whatever, okay? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts, okay? So if there's 8 parts, means that it's counting by eighths. which look like this. Okay? So 8 parts means it's counting by eighths. Okay? And down here, I'm going to add just a note, just, okay, tip, pro tip. Okay. Rulers usually count by 1/8, 1/16, or 1/4. Okay, one of those. Okay, rulers usually count by 1/8, 1/16, or 1/4. And I would say 1/8 is the most common, 1/16 is the next most common, and 1/4 is the most common. Okay, so rulers usually count by 1/8, 1/16, or 1/4, one of those. Okay, and at the end, I'll get a picture of the whole page. So I know I'm going back and forth a lot, but you'll be able to see the whole page at the end. Okay, so if each of these is 1/8, then I've got 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. This 1/2 is also 4/8, and I think you know that 4/8 is the same as 1/2. And then I've got 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and then 8/8 is the same as a whole. Okay. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is that the lines are different sizes. Okay. This half line is lower than all of the others. Okay. So if I kind of connect this, okay, and I'm going to come down just a little bit, okay. Look at that. I've got 2 parts, 1/2, 2 halves, okay. And I don't have a lot of room, so I'm going to do the sideways slash for my fraction, okay. 1/2, 1/2. If I look at the next most long line, okay, next longest, a little less awkward, okay? So these lines are not as long as the half line. I just did that backwards, didn't I? These lines, these two right here, are not as long as the half line, but they're not as short as the other two. And I really didn't mean to color those two in, and now I'm a little bummed that I don't have an eraser. So I'm going to try to erase that because I really don't like that I did it. But, colored pencil. So again, if I make a line across, going this way, and then I just bring those in, now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So each of these represents 1/4. So it should be starting to look like fraction bars. The 1/2s are the biggest, the 1/4s are smaller than the halves, and it takes 2/4 to be the same as 1/2. Okay? So if I were counting by fourths, I would have 1/4, 2/4, which is the same as 1/2, okay, and then 3/4. And so I actually am, right here in the middle, I'm going to write 1/4, 2/4, and then 3/4. Okay? I wrote 2/4 down here. Well, one, because I already had 1/2 written here and I didn't want to write over it. But usually when we're counting on a ruler, we usually say 1 and 1, we would say 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. And the reason that we say 1/2 is because 2/4 simplifies. And the reason we say 1/4 and 3/4 is because those are as simple as it gets. Okay. So now I've got the last section. Okay. The hardest part of doing these is picking a color. So I'm going to make a line here. Okay. And these are my shortest lines. The shortest lines are going to go with the smallest parts. Okay. Let's go ahead and add that down here. The shortest lines show the smallest parts. So that's another just little tip for you. The shortest lines show the smallest parts. Again, I'll show the whole thing at the end. Okay, so if I stretch this down, these lines down, so then each of these, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Each of those are 1/8. And so down here, this would be 1/8. This would be 2/8. And 2/8 reduces to 1/4 because 2 divided by 2 is 1, 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, then 3/8, and then 4/8. 4/8 is the same as 2/4, is the same as 1/2. Okay. 5/8. 6/8 is the same as 3/4 because 6 divided by 2 is 3 and 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then 7/8 and then 1/2, okay, which would be the same as 4/4. I probably should have written that. And that would be 2/2, 4/4, or 8/8. Okay. All of those mean 1/2. And again, when we look at these on a ruler, if I were measuring something, now I can't measure with this because it's not really an inch, but if I were measuring something, if it was to this first line, I would say it's 1/8 of an inch, if this were an inch. And if it got to the second line, instead of saying 2/8, I would say 1/4 because 1/4 is the simplified version. Okay? So in counting these, I would say 0, 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, 1/2, 5/8, 3/4, 7/8, and then 1/2. Okay? And normally, this is a whole lot smaller. Okay? Like here it is for real, but you'll get a paper that looks like this with any test that you take, and you actually have this number line on that paper. They give you a number line, only they call it a ruler because it is a ruler, but you can count it, 1/8, and then there's the 4th, 3/8, there's the 1/2, okay? A 1/2 is 4/8, so next is 5/8, 3/4, 7/8, 1/2. Okay, so that is fractions on a ruler, and I'm going to put it to right here because I think that's probably where you need it.